So there were these.
Can I ask just one thing?
Sure.
What's Atma? So
Atma is the spirit.
Okay.
Yes, please feel free to ask me if there is some word I rattled off. Okay. Atma is the spirit. So there was this list that we ran through, and I gave a printout of about the functional descriptions of health, because now Ayurveda really is very pragmatic and practical. So it talks about the philosophy of it, but then it's like, okay, this is maybe not for everybody, you know. We still do need to deal with the bodily, physical, mental dimensions, and that's very crucial. So you come down to the functional aspects of health, and there's an entire list. And to me, this needs to be added on to our health labs that we do. Maybe even more important than our health labs, and to run through it on a monthly basis to check in with ourselves whether all these functions are working well or not. Now, there are some of them that I have highlighted and made larger. Okay, so that is about hunger, about food digesting on time, about poop being regular, about an ability to think clearly and feel emotionally tuned in with the world, and about having adequate muscle mass and strength and built with strong bones. Okay. Now, if you focus on all of these, okay, I want you to think about where do you fit in? Do you think for these 5, are you all swasthya? These aspects are all okay? You're feeling hungry in time? Food getting digested well?
I'm always hungry.
You're always hungry? Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, and anyone else who is always hungry or not that hungry can skip meals easily?
Yeah, I can skip.
You can skip. Okay. And then, so, what happens is that these aspects, they are going to be different according to different natures and different constitutions. How often some people feel hungry and need to feed themselves and feel energetic and okay. Some people who can just go for days, some days without food, and it's fine. Some people can't go on for some hours without food. Some people feel hungry sometimes a lot, and sometimes they are not hungry at all. And if that is a natural tendency, then it becomes a part of their constitution which they need to manage. But generally, if somebody feels that they have a certain kind of a hunger pattern, but just off late, if things become odd, then it is a part of an imbalance, and that needs to be corrected. But what is your general tendency? That we have to identify, and that is a part of our Prakriti analysis. Okay. So I want you to reflect on that a little bit, and you can share along as well. Where do you stand vis-a-vis that? There are a lot of other details, but I have chosen a few ideas within Prakriti which are most crucial for us to focus on. What about poop? Go every day?
About what?
Go every day?
Number 2?
Yeah, for poop.
Oh.
Okay. Once in 2 days is normal for anybody?
Except when I travel.
Yeah, when you travel. So when you travel, it's off. So it's an imbalanced state. Okay. Tendency for laxation. Tendency for just having milk and having a little bit of diarrhea. Diarrhea tendencies?
That's me.
That's you? All the time? Okay. Yeah, and that's not stemming from infection, that's not stemming from having prunes, but that happens just regularly.
From eating dairy, I can't eat dairy.
Dairy.
Yeah, and like soy products.
Is that an insensitivity
I
then?
think it's just the type of protein, because like soy has like is like every type of amino acid. That's why it's hard. It's like it's not abnormal for it to be hard to digest,
Huh.
from what I've learned. So I just don't eat it.
Yeah. But when you're not eating dairy and soy, how are you? It's still on the laxative side.
I rather go a lot than not enough.
That-
I'm like on the other end of this.
That's
like,
true.
People who don't go every like 3 days, I'm like, how are you?
How do you survive?
How do you survive?
Yeah, right. Okay. So there are these shifts from the normal, which are still within the normal range, and those are the ones that Ayurveda is concerned with. It's its business to ask these questions and get into the details around for it. The thing is, when as a Vaidya, when we ask for stool related information, it's always, we consider whether is this something that has to be corrected or is this something that has to be managed. And that's what you can get into that zone as well. But of course, that's a more detailed health practitioner orientation, but this is just to bring out to you that there are differences in the way in which we experience normal biology.
Dr. Nami,
Yes.
question, kind of side question, but so I have seen previously in the past like a naturopath who also does acupuncture, and when I first saw her, she had me do like an actual like stool kit
Yeah.
to like take stool samples and like send them in and have it analyzed. But when I worked with you, it's more like you just want to know like the details, right, of the stool, like consistency or like kind of if it stays together, if it does that or that. So, I mean, is it helpful to like take samples and send them off to a lab to like, do a deep dive into like the constitution of your poop?
Yeah.
Or is it something from Ayurveda, like, I mean, that you can pretty easily be like, okay, with, this description, and this description, like, I've got it pinned pretty easily.
Yeah. So, it depends on what you're seeking to find out.
Mm.
So the stool kits, are they trying to find out the microbiological analysis, which, bacterial groups do they belong to? Or are they just looking for any kind of abnormal bacteria or organisms that may cause disease?
Mm-hmm.
So if it is just the abnormal, then it would be indicated for people having some issues, and it should not be done it's not needed to be done for everybody. But these days, just like the genome test, you have the stool kits which are very common, and people sort of do the microbial analysis. And I was extremely interested in that, so I studied it for my Parkinson's disease, and I work with Parkinson's disease patients, and found that the gut and the brain are so closely connected. So I was studying the enteric nervous system, and I was studying the microbiota and the kind of patterns that really emerge. There are a lot of lenses with which people are trying to understand the poop and health and its association with causation and disease and things like that. So you can definitely go that extra step, but you have to understand that all of that is right now, it's science which is it's not completely developed. It's more in the theoretical space. There's a lot of research around it, a lot of associative studies, but conclusive studies are a little tricky. And everyone knows that there is something in it, but to, put it one and one together is a question mark. The testing methods have questions as well. So if you send the same stool sample to two labs, they show different results as well. So all of those issues do exist. So nothing wrong in doing it, but what Ayurveda really stays on is just the functional form. And functionally, the stool being regular is important. It not being dry, it being well formed is extremely crucial.
Is what both?
Well formed,
Well, okay.
well formed, not dry, not too sticky, not with effort, and it should be floating. And this is a big one because most people I see, they have sunk stools. Allopathic medicine calls sunk stools as floating stools as problematic, associated with pancreatitis, whereas Ayurveda says the stool should ideally be floating. And there's a great wisdom in that, and because if you really understand what will make a stool float, oil will make it float on water. Oil makes it float. Fiber will also make it float. If there is less oil and less fiber, it's going to become dense, and it's going to sink. Okay. Now, for us to stay in health, to have a good amount of well-formed stool that floats is the idea, which means that the food that you've eaten has been digested well, that there's only mostly fiber but everything else has been assimilated. And if your stool